Welcome to the Microsoft Security Insights Podcast with your hosts, Franklin Grimberg and Edward Walton, where we discuss Microsoft 365 security and Azure security news and products.
Recorded November 24th at 3:04 p.m. Mountain Time. Good evening, Frank, Nathan, and Rod. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How's everyone else?
I'm doing good myself. I'm actually going through now and trying to calculate that Eastern Standard versus Mountain, so make sure I'm actually here on time.
Good stuff.
I was going to do a training opportunity and I miscalculated by 1 hour. So I'm like, sorry, I can't stay awake that late. So
Oh my goodness.
I had to turn something down. So
Can we say that this is our Thanksgiving episode?
yes, of course.
Awesome. I like that.
Look at the hat Nathan's wearing, of course.
Yeah. He looks like one of our founding fathers.
Yeah, came over the boat around 1630, just settled in Boston, Plymouth area, and
Plymouth Rock, yeah. That's awesome. Actually reminds me of growing up as a kid and all those TV specials, cartoons, and Charlie Brown. There were a bunch of other ones I probably can't think of now, but all the Thanksgiving Day specials, which I absolutely loved.
For all of our younger listeners.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So for all our younger listeners, you have nothing to look forward to because I don't think they've made a really good Thanksgiving movie in 20, 30 years. What was the last one? Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Oh, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I still like the claymation Frosty the Snowman. That's my favorite holiday movie. There's no better than that movie, in my opinion. The Grinch is good too, I guess. The Grinch, yeah.
Is that the one with the elf he wants to be a dentist?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And they have the Island of Misfit Toys. Yeah, yeah,
great.
Perfect. Yeah, they can't top that.
But you guys are talking about Christmas already.
Well,
Thanksgiving is just skipped over sometimes, I guess, because the Christmas decorations are out already. So everybody's like, just give me my turkey and let me move on.
You're getting bombarded with emails about Black Friday sales like on Monday, even last week. Hey, man, we got Black Friday sale. It started last week. Get on it. It's like, whoa.
The sale just doesn't end.
I'm so old that I prefer lasagna instead of turkey. So if anybody knows that reference, let me know.
So I got a Black Friday.
The Garfield?
No, that's Clear Rear.
Nathan was asking Frank, but anyway, yeah. What is Clear Rear, Rod? What's Clear
My wife's
Rear?
one of those little, water shooters for a while.
Bodega.
Yeah,
nice.
That was my first.
And people actually tune in thinking this was going to be a security podcast.
Well, it is security.
Oh, is that what we're doing today? I forgot. Oh, okay. Yeah. For Microsoft, right? Microsoft Security. Yeah, that's right. I almost forgot. Thank you.
So I'm sure that you guys have done nothing this week at Microsoft, or have you done anything this week?
I just had a successful endpoint DLP implementation, I'll have you know. So very happy on my side. I am doing work, but it's slowing down, and there's nice gaps between calls.
What is endpoint DLP?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the ability for customers to leverage controls on an endpoint with regards to managing sensitive information, either labeled or detected in the moment. So this particular company wanted to restrict the ability for their users to upload sensitive information to other M365 tenants. Not outright block them from going to those tenants, but restrict the uploading of said data. So it was successful as of today. So I'm very happy. It went straight
Windows clients only?
No, it's on Mac OS too right now, actually. So they have Win 10, which is generally the standard. Obviously, it's on Windows 11, and then Mac OS came out on public preview right when Ignite started. So it was in private preview before and then came out public preview during Ignite. And great timing, because multiple people I work with have been asking about it, including this customer too. They said, hey, can we get some Macs onboarded next week? I'm like, sure. Haven't done that yet. Maybe I'll fire up a Hyper-V Mac OS environment and make sure I can do it right before the call. So
That would be interesting to deal with all the exam questions written around that only being Windows 10, I'd imagine. So
Yeah, that's a good point, eh? Yeah. So I've never seen an exam question about how to install Defender for Endpoint on a Linux or a Mac device. Don't know if that's ever going to happen.
I think that will actually be happening. So
yeah,
I think the skills measured is focused on Windows. Once they go through another JTA refresh, I think that will actually be changing and enhanced. I think the SC200 course is going to have to be looked at because of the growth of functionality in Sentinel. I just can't see them doing it in a 4-day class. So that's going to be interesting. I did just, I was going to hold off because Edward's not here. I do want to let people know I did pass my, shockingly, the SC300 exam. Since I've only written about 100 identity-based exam questions in my life, I definitely should have passed it. But it actually made me, I actually liked the exam. It definitely made me think in different areas, some things I had not thought about before. So I think it's easier than most of the exams, just probably because I've written so many identity questions, but it definitely had some areas that I said, I'm going to go back and take a look at that. And then some other things like, where is that feature? Is it here or there? And I couldn't remember, that sort of thing. So
classic.
So I only got like an 888 on the exam or whatever. So didn't even break 900 on that.
Okay. That's a great score, Frank. A great score. Yeah. I've got to challenge that.
I'm always passing by the skin of my teeth on those things, like 730, 750. 760.
Oh, I am too.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
I'm not a great test taker.
I don't know what it is.
Speaking of tests and certifications, I know Edward will probably hate me saying this, but the merging of the Learn profile with the certification profile, I did that this week because I have to update one of my certifications. It was seamless. I literally closed my eyes, opened them, and it was done. And I'm like, oh, okay, great.
You've got Edward to thank for that.
Yeah,
because he went through all that pain. Now they have it down right. So
they've got laminated sheets on how to deal with people who have problems now in all the support centers. Like, hey, we don't want to blow out anybody's Learn profiles because that Edward guy made a big stink and escalated. So this is how we're going to resolve
it. Worked out all the kinks and all the bugs. That's great.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, congrats, Frank. I want to take that one too. I before I joined Microsoft, I had a big on-prem AD and then M365 identity background, and then I just haven't touched it since I joined because of how we have the different domains kind of split up in consulting services. So I've been all security and compliance since I started, but very comfortable in both those areas, and I've been meaning to challenge that test. So thanks for giving me all the answers yesterday. I'll plan that in December on a down day.
Merry Christmas.
If you're going based upon my memory from the test, you might as well forget it. I lied to you. So what have you been up to, Rod?
So really not much. I've been off since probably Monday about 3 p.m. I told Ed I'm cutting everything off at 3 p.m. Ed tries to call me at 2:59, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I had to take the call, of course, because Edward always has something really good to say. So I took it. It wasn't worth it, but that's okay. But I do have a little self-promotion. I apologize for this. 2 things that I've been working on recently. I'm getting ready to write a book. I'll talk about that some other episode. It's going to be interesting. But we do have a Microsoft Sentinel book that comes out in February, and I was able to approve my bio this past week, so I know it's on track. So folks will probably be interested in that. That's Microsoft Sentinel in Action. It's like a volume 2 of the original, written by a couple friends of mine. So something to look forward to. Also, I have to absolutely mention this. Had a meeting last week or a couple weeks ago with some folks internally, and it really shocked me to understand that we have a number of customers that are reluctant to use things like Microsoft Sentinel and Defender and even Intune, sometimes things like that, because of they believe that they absolutely need to be a pro at KQL. And that's not the case. So I started a series last week right? It's called series called Must Learn KQL. In fact, it's got a short link if you go to aka.ms/must-learn KQL. Start a series there all the way from scratch. I'm going to go all the way through this thing. I think it's going to be probably 20 or 21 different parts probably by the time it's done. But I'm kind of taking a methodical approach. There's no one should not be using our products to secure and monitor and secure their environments. And KQL should absolutely not be that barrier, because it's the simplest, easiest language. And well, my opinion to learn. If I can learn, anybody else can, because I'm a dummy, right? So
do pick it up quick. Yeah, I had a failed post-secondary in computer programming, and it's straightforward, right? And I don't have a SQL background or anything like that, but you look at, it's like when I got my first consulting gig, like, do you know PowerShell? I'm like, well, I know how to look up what I need in order to deal with the problem I have in front of me and potentially manipulate it to do what I want. They're like, oh yeah, great. It's like, yeah, I'm not a developer, right? Same thing with the KQL queries you see in the portals. There's a lot of community-driven queries that you can borrow from and learn from just by looking at how they structured the query. So yeah, you don't need to know it at all, really. It's a nice to have. It's certainly an important skill, but if you just want to get it stood up, especially on the M365 Defender space, it's augmenting the existing solution, but it's certainly not required in order to stand things up and start getting protected today. I agree with you, Rod.
So what I found is that people confuse knowing KQL and knowing their data, right? And once you actually teach them how to investigate and find their data, they're not even thinking about, they have to go back and look at how to structure the query or whatever. But I think that a lot of people they say it's KQL, but really they just don't know how to find the data that they're looking for specifically and use KQL to do that. So like today, I was dealing with someone that said, hey, I want to know who added permissions to a role or to a managed identity, right? So how do you do that in KQL? Does anybody know right away? No.
Always jump to search.
Yeah,
exactly.
Search by default.
Right. So it's very important to learn the process of the data discovery more than it is the KQL side. And I think that people, they're scared of it because they hear KQL, but really it's just they don't know the data. And that's okay not to know the data. You just have to know the process to discover your data, and that's the most important thing.
And that was that's the third part that I released like this week on Monday, was jumping into the search. So literally part one was all the resources you need, because I'm going to actually use some of our demo environments that people can access during the series, and I'm going to give them queries to actually use in our demo environment. So it's going to be interactive the whole time. So the third part of it was jumping into search, right? First part was the resources you need. Second part was where does the name come from and why it's important for to use. And then the third one, just jump into search. Fourth one, I think I'm going to jump in and talk about search queries, how to take search and turn those into actual search queries where you can develop analytics rules and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Nathan, you look like you wanted to jump in a few times there. What are your thoughts on the whole topic?
Oh, yeah. So, when it comes to KQL, like I want to say years ago, right, there weren't as many resources out there. There was like the Azure Docs page and a couple of people here and there. Clive Watson was one of the earlier guys kind of messing with it and just putting out those queries out on GitHub. A couple other folks too. But, I still think to this day, it's not as bad as, it used to be. But and I'd love to see this, Rod, if you're thinking about kind of implementing this in the training course, is a lot of times, right, you approach a new language, like let's say Python, PowerShell. In this case, it's a querying language, right? And you have preconceived notions. Okay, I've got an array of data and I need to do something with that array. And maybe I need to do a conditional check in that array of data and filter out some noise, right? And so then you start thinking, okay, how do I do this in KQL, right? And then, so to me, a lot of the times the frustration I had when I was first learning it was one, just trying to get exposed to patterns and practices, like rock solid patterns, right, that someone had developed that I could take, right, and okay, because most developers out there, right, it's copy paste, change some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the big thing. And I feel like over the last year or 2 years, right, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, people have made a really good conscious decision of commenting on their content with that information, right? So like there's the gentleman, and I'm gonna butcher the name, it's out on Twitter, but he's doing on a GitHub repo like 99 KQL queries, right?
365 days of KQL.
Yeah. And he's doing a great job in the description, and then remarking out stuff, commenting about why he's doing things in there, right? All it takes, like in KQLs, is 2 little slashes, and then you can write a comment about why you're, what you're doing this for and why you're using it for. So I feel like when more people do that, right, and submit that into GitHub or in, wherever, right, in blogs and stuff, it's really helpful, because just being able to look at the remarks.
I got to tell you, as a programmer,
Agreed.
Programmers don't comment their code.
Yeah, they told us that day one of college,
The-
comment everything, right? And then
The
some people
code,
don't. Yeah.
is self-explanatory. It comments it itself. I have to tell you, just
I like comments, especially the
if
saved
it
queries
compiles,
on the
it
portal. I love
runs. It's fine.
Wow,
There's
yeah,
just,
that's fair. Comments are great though. Yeah, that's how I learn, right? It's hard for me just to dive in and learn from square one. I just
And-
like getting exposure to an existing query and then tinkering with it.
All
and
right,
then
when
learning
you're
from those.
creating your compliance policies, it's got the little boxes there that you're going to add additional information for people. Do you actually fill those out? Be honest.
I'm in a demo tenant, so I don't.
You're not even commenting your own policy.
No, but I
compliance
know what it
policies.
does
Come
because
on.
I make it
You
something
know what it
obvious in
does.
the name.
But what about
I
the
know.
next person that comes in behind you?
Nobody's going in that tenant
my
but me. I
goodness.
encourage our customers to use the description field accordingly so that future administrators know what was going on when that decision
Yeah.
was made. But
I
yes,
hear
in my own tenant, no. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Description should be in there. And you've been in those situations before. You see something stood up in somebody's infrastructure. You're coming in, whatever, maybe you're on-prem or a consultant, and there is no documentation to support why that decision was made. Yeah, that sucks, right? So it's a good thing to comment and have a description. I hear you. Yeah, absolutely.
In programming, I've seen such strange code. I'm like, I'm not touching it. I'm not rewriting it. They must have had a reason for the way that they did it. Then I leave it alone.
Don't break
So
anything.
we comment your case. So yes, Nathan changed his name to comment your KQL.
I'm going to be changing my name throughout this episode, man.
I've been
Just
watching
need
that.
Day one to laugh.
Great.
The little game.
Perfect.
All right, so we have Nathan Swift who's back. Edward's like, come back, Nathan. Then Edward leaves.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with that?
I don't
But so Nathan, what have you been up to?
Yeah. So, I think the last time we spoke was probably in the teens or 20s of the Security Insights podcast. So, last time we talked, I think that's right. We were talking about ingesting Canary tokens into Microsoft Sentinel.
Right.
And, since then, just been grinding and plugging away with customers. Specifically this week, it was kind of funny when you were asking people earlier about what you were doing this week. I actually had a couple customer conversations, but a lot of it was dealing with a lot of Azure network security. So a little bit of web application firewall and kind of logging from web application firewall. And then also DDoS protection, believe it or not, right? Going into Black Friday and some other things, some customers were kind of concerned about that and just wanted some information around Azure standard DDoS. So kind of breaking that down, testing it. And,
what role are you in now?
well, so that's true too. My role's changed a little bit. So I'm a security cloud solution architect at Microsoft. So same thing I was doing, right? Instead of my focus being apps and infrastructure, it's more security related. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Azure Network Security Services, Microsoft Sentinel, and then the whole hubbub now is a well architected framework, but with a security slant to it. So I've done one or two of those as well.
I was in
Cool.
a debate today about how important it is to do the AZ500 exam, and I think it's actually really, really important for everyone to do that exam, to have that Azure security specific background. I think it's critical. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you've taken any of the AZ300 exams, like 301 or 302, especially the ones that are like either apps and infrastructure architecture, or even the SC exams that deal with identity, right? Azure Active Directory, then you can go into the AZ500 and you'll probably know a good set of those questions, right? You just kind of have to look at some of the other domains, and maybe you haven't worked with like web application firewall or Azure firewall or something. So you just augment that, right? But a lot of the same concepts like network security groups, ACLs, Azure Active Directory for Identity, MFA, those type of things, like they're in AZ500. So they kind of pick and choose from all over, places here and there.
So my recommendation to people is do the AZ. If you're not going to take the AZ700 cert, do the Learn modules for it before you go and do the AZ500. The other thing that I was really surprised about, because I had not looked at it, was AZ800 and 801, which is the Windows Server hybrid exams. And
Right.
I have to say, I can't wait for that content to come out from a security standpoint. It looks awesome. There's a lot of things that I was pushing and dealing with identity from a security standpoint that they're like, oh, no, that this is not for on-prem or whatever, that's actually covered in 800, 801, I forget which side it is. So those are two exams I'm actually pretty excited about taking, and covers a lot of things I wanted to see in some of the other exams out there. So if anyone gets a chance and when those Learn modules come out, I'll definitely be looking at them.
Just so you know, that series would not exist today except for one of the colleagues on my team, Orrin Thomas. He pushed for that for 3 or 4 months. Had to prove the case and everything because, Microsoft was reluctant about the hybrid story when it comes to certifications and things like that, but he pushed for it and proved it. So that's why it exists.
The skills measure looks really, really good. So
yeah, it does.
I'm excited about that. All right. So you've also been doing some, now you're AZ1620. So AZ1620, you've also been doing some videos yourself. And what are you doing in that area?
Yeah. So a while back, I kind of been doing blogging through the tech community scene with Microsoft Sentinel, with Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and with Azure Network Security. And then each time I was writing blogs and stuff in those areas, I was creating like GitHub content up to the Microsoft's GitHub repository for customers to deploy like security automations, typically, especially for Microsoft Sentinel and Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And, been doing that for the last couple of years, just building a lot of Logic apps and having repeated conversations with colleagues early on, and then even with customers to this day about, well, how do I get started with Logic apps, or how do I get started with security automation? So I kind of started thinking about all the things that I had learned, all the little like tips and tricks and like nuances, like even in the Logic apps designer UI, clicking certain areas and then not being able to click back into it. So, well, why don't I just kind of incorporate all those things? We'll start from the ground, how to think about building security automation, and then actually build it over a series of YouTube videos. And so I just finished kind of that series, about 5 videos in that, around thinking about how to build a security automation with a Logic app, and then actually building different components of it. And then the 5th and final video was how to export the template, how to make it generic so any customer or anybody can deploy it, and then how to submit a pull request to GitHub. So the other thing too that I'm kind of passionate about is other people taking what they know, right, and then giving it back out to the community. So that was kind of the whole point or thought around let's do a YouTube video series about that. Hopefully encourage some folks to, because there's a lot of, you'll talk with some really sophisticated customers and other people in the community, and they've got some amazing things. It's just like, man, all you got to do is just like make it a little generic and then make a pull request. And trust me, they'll want that content on that Microsoft GitHub. So, you know, and that all comes back to an earlier conversation. I don't know if you guys have ever read it, but it's John Law, who works at Microsoft, but it was basically the GitHubification of InfoSec and kind of what we're seeing in the space, especially exploding since the pandemic, content and just information in different areas of cybersecurity, whether it's detection rules or blogging or anything like that. So
I love how it's more accessible and available to the public to comment and get feedback, you know, be consistent with the back and forth and really help drive the experience to be better, right? You know, I think of old TechNet versus what we're on now with Docs Power, you know, the back end being GitHub and everybody commenting and thinking about it just from the Microsoft standpoint. It's gone leaps and bounds, right? And like you said, across the industry, we see that a lot too, which is cool.
So one of the things I find interesting is that a lot of people have on-prem security automation, right? And you're sending all this now to the cloud. You're like, all right, how do I get back to my on-prem, be able to trigger that, right? And so that's why I'm like, you know, when we were talking about Azure Arc before, I'm like, oh, so basically you can run logic apps in your local environment, right? And then you have access to inside the inside your network to continue with your to utilize the security automation you already had in place. The other thing that I don't know when it went, I know I'm glad Edward's not here today. I was actually in MCAS today, and I had not noticed that. I was looking specifically, it's like the OAuth risky app consent. And in there was an option where it says, you know, email this or whatever. I think now there's an option there to trigger a Power Automate.
Oh, direct through the UI. Great.
Yeah, if you take a look at that, Brody, in your environment, make sure I'm not a liar because I looked at many different screens today. But yeah, that was I was actually surprised that there was a link directly to triggering off Power Automate. All right, Brody's going to see if I'm lying or not.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I don't write descriptions in anything I do in my tenants, so I'm not really a great consultant, but I'll look it up. That's cool though, because you always knew that Power Automate was there, being able to be leveraged. Well, some people did, right?
Please verify that I'm not lying. Please verify I'm not lying.
I will. Don't put me on the spot right this second though. I'm going to need a moment to poke around and remind myself where that is. So carry on with your automation discussion with Nathan.
Go into the policies, I think it is, and look at the look in the policies for risky.
Okay.
So are you also doing AZ 1620? Are you also doing something on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's another thing I'm going to be exploring, I think, coming into the new calendar year. So LinkedIn has a LinkedIn Live where you can spin up a live session just like Twitch or Periscope or something like that. And conceptually, what I want to try to do is have like a weekly, looks like a comic book, an issue where I'm just deploying maybe a logic app or doing something with Azure security and just covering it right live, and which, you know, can be interesting, but I think you can kind of learn some stuff through that, because a lot of times when you hit the ground running with stuff, the documentation or even blog articles, they're all cleaned up, right? And then you encounter something with like, maybe you fat fingered something, or in JSON, is declarative JSON, there's a missing comma or something, right? Or you just encounter an error or something. And so I want to kind of do that live just to kind of show folks like, okay, you know, one, we're going to talk about cybersecurity in Azure, but we'll also, you know, as you're deploying it, tweaking, configuring it, doing stuff in there, just make it kind of live, right? And troubleshoot it live. So that's going to be kind of interesting. I'm going to try to do it weekly, and then I'm going to try to maybe cut it down. I don't know. Like, I'm still thinking about it. They recommend that the live session go to at least 15 minutes. So
50 or 15?
15 at least for a minimum to get
Okay.
audience engagement and stuff like that. So
Are-
it's
Are
like
you gonna have Are you gonna have office hours where people can ask you questions?
I think I'm going to try to lead into that, right?
Cool.
Probably not to begin with, just because I want to get more comfortable about that, like being public with stuff. That it's always, I'm not an introvert. I'm actually extrovert, but this whole concept of like just being online digitally, right? Like I don't even have a Facebook profile, right? So I'm slowly trying to get myself into that and getting comfortable with like a live Q&A type of thing. So, but that's a great idea, right? And I'd love to do something like that, maybe like as a monthly or quarterly thing during those weeklies.
Cool.
Excellent. And how's your show going, Rod?
You caught me unawares there. I was actually looking. Show's going well. Well, my team of
What were you looking for? You were like, I was looking, and then you stopped.
Well, I was trying to make sure that Nathan's custom profile link isn't available already because mine is, and I don't have 100 subscribers, not yet. So we'll work on that together, Nathan.
Okay. All right. So your show.
Yeah. So anyway, my show. So we're gonna do this weekly news show. Kind of started and promoted it through Ignite. However, since that time, my team went from 4 people to 2. So we need more people other than myself for this to work. So we have some backfill. So anyone interested in joining my team, there you go.
Cool.
There you go.
Good advertisement. Are you a good boss? What can we expect you as our leader?
I will wear hats.
Okay.
So in fact, not just this one. I look good.
Multiple.
in hats.
So you wear multiple hats as leader of this.
I wear multiple hats
organization
as a
group.
leader. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I do the
yeah.
work and, do the other stuff as well. So yeah. And I'm a fun
Excellent.
guy. I think so. I feel like I am. My
That's
grandkid
good.
loves me. That's enough.
That's all that matters.
Because he doesn't work for you.
He will.
You will. By the way, Frank, I did validate what you said. That's awesome. Power Automate's directly linked in the Cloud App Security portal. Sorry, Defender for Cloud Apps portal. You were
So
right.
when there's an alert for a policy, you can now fire off automation from Cloud App Security for that through
Yeah.
Power Automate.
Built right in. Yeah, that's nice because I don't think a lot of it wasn't maybe well known across a lot of different capability sets that you could leverage Power Automate in every single way. So I'm glad they're building that right into the UI to make that more obvious.
And I don't even know what's passed across to it or what the data will look like and so on. But that's something new there for you, AZ1620, or Let's Automate All Things, now your name.
Yeah, love it.
So what is the difference between Power Automate and Logic apps there? Let's automate all the things.
Yeah. So, they're very similar, right? They're the only real kind of difference, right? Because it's the same kind of designer, same backend technologies. Is obviously like the UI portals are a little bit different when you're designing and stuff like that, but the same kind of core concepts of connectors, actions, dynamic content, expressions, which is kind of like a low code language that you can use in there. That's all the same. And there's just some slight differences between some of the connectors. There's a couple that are available in Logic apps that aren't available in Power Automate and vice versa. But really the way I think about it, right, is if I'm trying to build like an enterprise solution and I need it backed potentially, like I need it ACLed from the public internet, or I need some other kind of like enterprise bells or whistles, or I need to maybe integrate it with like on-prem FTP servers, or I need to transform XML or transform files on-prem, then you might use Logic apps, right? Because it's more a little bit more robust than some of the connectors that deal with like on-premise integrations. But at the end of the day, I'm not too familiar with Power Automate or some of those things. I think you get additional things like in Logic Apps with like logging, which can be helpful, performance metrics and other things too that may not be available in Power Automate. Brody might be able to comment a little bit if he's done some stuff in the Microsoft portal.
But most importantly,
what differences have you guys seen?
Most importantly, what's the licensing difference?
Oh yeah. So the licensing difference really, there's not really license. So like anytime you go into Azure, for the most part, other than like a few services, it's always consumption based, right? So we always think of it in terms of meters. I'm turning on a light switch and I've got a dimmer switch, right? In this case, right, for Logic Apps, you only pay per execution. So when the Logic app is triggered, could be a timer trigger, could be a webhook URL trigger, or something else is triggering it. You pay per each action that you have in that Logic app, and it's usually like micro pennies. Where it can get you, right, is if you're doing like, let's say like a for each loop, so you get an array of data. Let's say it's like 1 million records, right? And you're trying to do something with those 1 million records, and then you're taking those records of data and inserting them into SQL, right? So all those actions in that for each loop, that's where it can kind of get I don't want to say really costly. You just got to understand what you're doing with the data and understand that that's how they're charging is per each little action in the UI designer that you see there. And again, it's like micro pennies. So it's kind of similar to almost like AWS Lambda or Azure Functions in the way that it costs.
And so, Rod, how come Power Automate's not directly integrated into Sentinel?
Yeah, Rod.
Yeah. So it's not yet. Let's just put it that way.
Good answer. It's on the roadmap.
Well, everything's on the roadmap.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everything a customer asks for is on the roadmap. No question.
Somewhere. Yeah. Somewhere.
That was no answer. Okay, I got it.
Well, yeah. So there's methods and ways to go back and forth through that kind of hybrid model for automation. It's not a great story, but currently, let's just put it that way.
All right.
Fun times. So I tried to click through on that Defender for Cloud Apps, Power Automate, create a playbook, and unfortunately, licensing. My demo tenant subscription doesn't allow me to stand up this premium automation of isolating a machine using Windows Defender upon a Cloud App Security alert. I have been paywalled, unfortunately.
Wow.
Drat. Yeah.
I don't know when they put it. I don't know if I've just missed it for a long time. I don't know when that got put in. So
I haven't seen that there.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's really difficult to keep up on all the changes and features and stuff like that. It would be really nice if there's some way to flag everybody, particularly the things that are important, but
the little things.
Yeah.
Internally, they have those new connected communities, which are really nice. But like I talk to customers about regularly, we're an agile development shop and things get released weekly and we're all just keeping up all the time. So it's fun, right? We're no longer just here's version 1, version 2. It's now just there's continuous improvements based on feedback, and that's the way it should be. So it's fun, even if you miss some stuff once in a while.
Well, I mean, they just have to feed it out to Rod so he can put it out in the blog and everything will be fine.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Yeah, that's another one of those hats. I only brought 2 tonight. I should have brought another. That's another hat that I wear. Getting to this automation though, I just kind of have to, and I hate if I'm skipping ahead here, but I've really enjoyed Nathan's video series. I really have. And I was telling him a little bit earlier before we went live, but I do want to absolutely repeat this because this is something to me as a Sentinel person that works with Logic Apps and working with customers this is a big pain point, right? So everything that we have, for example, in Sentinel, everything that's KQL based, Azure Monitor, all that stuff, it's really easy to create things and then share it, right? Just literally copy and paste and put it on a GitHub repository or submit it to the official GitHub repositories for the products. Logic Apps are a little bit different. Our playbooks, our Logic Apps are a little bit different. That's always kind of been a pain point because customers want to share that, but there's some really small, intricate details that kind of are left out of that whole JSON template model, which this last video that Nathan produced and released, I watched that. And I thought that was awesome because that really had everything in there that I've been looking for as far as creating those JSON templates. I would love, Nathan, if you could give us a little bit of info into that instead of me just, literally repeating the entire video. I think it's 50 minutes or something like that. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, the interesting thing too, right, is when you go to take that logic app after you built it, tested it, right, there's always that concept of, okay, how do we templatize it, right? And so if you ever go to like Microsoft Defender for Cloud's workflow automation folder on GitHub, or Microsoft Sentinel's playbooks folder on GitHub, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, because you're going to see all these little folders with all the security automations you can deploy, at the very bottom there's like a README file, right? And the README file actually walks through how to do this step by step. But there's also some nuances to that, right? As you're reading it. So the idea was to record a video actually doing those step by step and encountering problems. I actually did not edit out, or I edited a little bit, but I kept in a lot of the troubleshooting, right? Because like you start copying and pasting things to make that template deployable, so it's generic, and you miss out on a couple things here and there. And so you run into an error as you're testing it, and then you fix that error. And so it was kind of cool to record that and show that. I gotta imagine at some point somebody's going to have to write some software or some type of layer to just export it generically. I think I've seen some stuff out there. I haven't really tested it though. But the idea would be, hey, we're gonna export the template and then run through software, just make the generic parts generic that need to be generic in certain spots. So, but yeah, so in that fifth and final video, I kind of walk through all those little areas of the deployment template that need to be generic and how to make them generic in certain ways so that when a customer tries to deploy it or somebody tries to deploy it, you're eliciting a response, right? You're saying, hey, I want to know this type of information from you. I want to know your security operations email address. I want to know this thing and that thing, or this API key, so that when I go to deploy it, I embed all these settings for you so that the automation is just ready to go, really, so that you're not having to go and edit the deployed logic app and then start filling in information. So
well, that's the other thing, because it does retain that tenant's information, whatever it happens to be, whether it's your subscription ID, your tenant ID, your API code, which you just mentioned. Could be some privacy issues with that. You can't literally just export and send it to somebody, because there are some, other than the dependencies that you have to put right in that template, there can be some customer issues with that, I guess.
What is the most common automation you're seeing, security automation you're seeing in specific to Azure?
Yeah, let me go ahead and just, do you mind if I share my screen out?
Go ahead.
Frank will make you presenter if he hasn't already. Perfect.
Already did.
Look at that.
All right, are you guys able to see it?
Yep.
Yeah, so really it breaks down into three fundamental areas. By far, I think the two biggest that I see out there is enriching data when it comes to Microsoft Sentinel. You'll see a lot of logic apps, security automation, enriching data, right? We're going to take a URL address, we're going to throw it against VirusTotal, we're going to get the results back, and then we're going to embed it in the incident ticket, right? Or we're going to take all the IP addresses in a Sentinel incident, and we're going to throw it against Gray Noise. Gray Noise is going to tell us if we can rule it out because it's seen it before, it's a benign scanner, or their sensors have seen it, it is a scanner, or maybe Gray Noise has never seen this IP address before, and because it hasn't seen it on its sensors, we're going to then not only put that information back into the Sentinel incident, but we're going to raise the severity of that incident based off of what the IP addresses were found from Gray Noise. So that's kind of the concept behind enrichment. But by far and large, I think a lot of them are orchestration. So I want to notify some people that there was an Azure Security Center, or what they call Microsoft Defender for Cloud recommendation, a posture management recommendation. But I want to notify somebody within the last 7 days that modified that Azure resource that then created that recommendation, right? To let them know that whatever they modified more than likely made it insecure, right? Or I want to look at the resource owners and contributors that could actually change the Azure resource and notify them about that posture management change in a storage account, for instance. And so you'll see a lot of orchestration around notifications to Azure owners, or even like AWS folks. Now that you can bring AWS in, or you've been able to do it for a while, but you can bring in AWS resources in the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. But you want to notify that via tags on Azure Arc instances. You want to notify the tag owners, right? This has prompted some conversations about how to maybe bring in tags from AWS into Azure Arc or in the Azure Resource Graph sometime maybe in the future. And so we see a lot of like orchestration things there. And, you know, it's not just notification. It could be create a ticket in Jira or create a ServiceNow ticket. The third area that we see too, and it's not, we don't see a lot of it. There are some cases of it, but it's actually responding to the incident in a way of like isolating an Azure virtual machine, revoking access in Azure Active Directory, or like updating a web application firewall rule or an Azure firewall rule, or maybe your network virtual appliance like a Cisco ASA or something, taking an IP address and then putting it into the block list for blocking outbound communication.
What else you got there on that PowerPoint?
Yeah, so the idea, if you go through the YouTube video series, is, you know, we talk a little bit about those kind of three kind of core concepts. Now there might be a fourth one. I've asked people in the community if you could think of like a fourth area that you want to automate that doesn't fit into one of these three buckets. Would love to learn about it and kind of add that in there. But the idea was like, as we start thinking about how we want to build security automation, I kind of created a template out on GitHub that you can download pre-canned. And right, it starts with the problem statement. Like, what are we trying to solve ultimately? Am I trying to notify someone on this team over here in AWS or a development team in Azure that I have no clue who stood up that VM or that storage account? Maybe I need to revoke access like I was talking about in Azure Active Directory. So once you kind of come with that problem statement of what you're trying to solve with the automation, you then kind of write your hypothesis to talk about how you think you're going to go about solving it. I'm going to use this type of API, or I'm going to use this type of mechanism in Azure, or I'm going to use this KQL or Azure Resource Graph query to get this information and act upon it. And then finally, you can start filling out the actions that you want to start taking. And so this template was kind of a way to kind of walk through that. And then you can see it kind of filled out here. In the YouTube video series, we basically wanted to notify a security team of a higher medium Azure Defender alert. And then any of the folks that were recently modifying or creating the Azure resource that was involved with the Azure Defender alert, right? So the Azure Defender alert was about malware being uploaded to a storage account, or maybe Tor browser access to a storage account. We wanted to look at the last 14 days or 7 days that anyone's modified or deployed that storage account that's, you know, in the alert, and notify them as well, because they might have some contextual information that they want to tell the security operations team. Ultimately, where I want to kind of take this in future iterations is start using teams. And Jing, you've had on before, build a wonderful automation using cards and teams, and start connecting the dots when these alerts connect up with Azure resources to let the developers, the people that are modifying it, know or deploying applications into those resources. Hey, can you provide some additional context in the Teams channel that's spun up based off of this alert? So that's kind of where I'd like to head with that.
That would be really nice. Sorry,
Is
Frank.
there anything with Inside Sentinel that shows you your ROI on doing this? Like, is there a workbook that's specific to automation that says, here's what you've done, we've enriched 50 alerts, or anything like that, so you can actually show the benefit of the automation that's taken place?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. That's a really interesting point. There are some, because Logic Apps, right, when you build the security automation,
Right.
can write logs into Log Analytics Workspace about runtimes and what those runtimes were doing and if they ran into an error and stuff. So I've seen workbooks out there. Bill York is a person out there. If you check him out, I think he's at Microsoft now too. Bill York wrote an Azure workbook that actually showed like end to end your health status of all your security automations or Logic Apps running. And then also, I think there's some one or two maybe other workbooks or content out there around the operation of security automations or the operation of Logic Apps. But in terms of like running like an ROI kind of filter or content around that,
But
I don't think I've seen that.
specific to the incidents and alerts that have appeared with Inside Sentinel. Is there a workbook in there, Rod?
There
Or
is.
that's on the roadmap.
No, we do have one. It's there already. I was just checking to make sure the data that it represents really quick because I have a couple. Yeah, you literally just select the workspace, and it's going to give you like an overview of the playbooks over obviously a certain period of time that they've run, which ones have run, your activity, and also the billable info, which is absolutely important to every customer. Yeah, and I was looking. Yeah, it does have everything. So it's actually called Playbooks Health Monitoring. It's a playbook. Yeah. I forget. It was recent, Nathan. So there's that, and obviously, well, it's a workbook, right? And there's that KQL thing again, but it's a workbook, and you can take what we have as a template, and if you want some other stuff there, yeah, go ahead and add it to our workbook or create a brand new workbook for it. And that really kind of that fourth component, Nathan, that you're kind of looking for, I believe, a lot of our customers want as part of that automation to know, because they're literally trying to create automation around things so they don't have to see those more common scenarios and situations, right? It's there's an incident, they always respond to it the same way, they automate that so they don't see it. That can be an issue, and so that other fourth piece of automation a lot of times is just, hey, alert me when when a playbook is actually run, because I've it's closed out the incident for me. It's done everything I normally would have done myself. So
no, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm actually going into Sentinel right now just to see if I can pull that up. Kind of funny. What was the name of that workbook?
just type in play.
There we go.
Play will bring it up. It's playbooks in Sentinel. There you go.
Yeah, looks like I've actually used it before. I did save it out. This wouldn't be the first time that I've probably forgotten about something.
Yeah, the screwy thing is if you go get your work, choose your workspace, your resource group, and then it's going to pull up the first 10 Logic Apps. So you have to actually, it's not very intuitive. So now the first 10 are selected, and you may not even run those first 10. So you have to go in and select the ones that you run a lot. So.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, because some of the security automations, my subscription's littered with like hundreds of them, because they're either I start trying to create something and then I get sidetracked and I never get back to it, or I've done version 3 of something, right, where I've cloned the Logic app and changed it a little bit. But we can see here a lot of these that I think I pulled up for those resource groups. They're all like, they're not Sentinel based, I don't think. Yeah, they're all DDoS network security. The only one is this one here, the gray noise ones. Here we go. Here's some in this RG playbooks. Those are some ones that are Microsoft Sentinel based. Okay, there we go. Okay. No? Yeah. Oh, well. Let's see if we get some stuff here. This is the fun thing about demoing things on the fly. But I can see here, like, Yeah, it's very interesting. We can see some different things here. Logic triggers by status.
Well, and this is literally pulling everything out of that Logic Apps resource anyway, because if you go in those specific Logic Apps, it's going to give you the whole history of that Logic App successes, failures, all the good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Interesting. That's where you're talking about that ROI thing, billable
Yep.
info. Very cool. Here we go. Billable
You
triggers.
You spent $800,000. That's pretty good.
Those are action execution.
Oh, actions. Oh, I scared you there for a minute, didn't I?
Not dollars. Yeah, for sure.
At 1,000th of a cent, let's see what that is. So it doesn't look like we have an actual calculator in here, so I'll have to build one.
It'd be interesting if like Bill York had written some of this or not. I got to reach out to him, unless you know Rod, who was kind of the author of this this thing. I wish sometimes people would stake their claim on stuff.
It's in the
I can tell you in a
comments.
minute.
As a programmer, I never put my name in the comments. Put Brody's name.
I can see that.
The yell that just disappears.
And I would just copy Frank's code and make little changes to make it look like my code. That's how I got through school.
Well, this is
Yeah, let me-
cool.
Let me show you one thing too. This will be
Okay.
kind of interesting. I follow a bunch of people on like InfoSec Twitter, and I forget who was commenting. It might have been Hugh or one of the guys out on Twitter that I follow, but they had posted a tweet about in Logic Apps in the run query and list results, there was a new version of it, which was like really interesting. And that's kind of you'll see this typically as a pattern. You'll either a timer approach or maybe something triggers like a security incident, from Microsoft Sentinel or Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And then you need to actually query and get some information back within the last 15 minutes or 5 minutes, or maybe the hour since that incident triggered it. Or in this case, it's actually specifically doing like a daily report that's going to look out against application gateway firewall logs for geo countries. And specifically, if a country is unknown and we've allowed it to talk to the web application behind the WAF, it gets a country code as ZZ. And so what this is doing is saying, right, I want to know of the allowed IPs that connected, summarize those and build a table. And what's interesting is in older versions of this, the version 1 of this, your results would come back in rows and columns. So if you think about like how KQL executes and runs, your results would come back instead of a single array, you would have one array called rows, and you would have the 4 values. And then you'd have another array called columns, which would contain each of these things. It was a real big mess, right? Like when you think about how you want to kind of run a KQL search, get that data back. And so in version 2, they kind of cleaned that up, and now it's a full array combined with the rows and columns. I don't know why they separated them, but it was a PETA for sure when you were trying to use KQL searches and get results back in a Logic app to automate things. And so what I'm trying to do here, or what I was trying to do here today, is build a report that says, hey, show me all in the last day, what are the unknown countries that we logged and allowed, and give me those IP addresses. And then what I'm going to eventually do is check those IP addresses, make sure they're not part of Azure as an Azure public IP address, drop them out, give me a more filtered list of unique public IP addresses that are unknown, and then go ahead and then send a report to a security analyst or the networking team, and then that person in the email can do their investigation and hit a button. Yes, I want these updated into the web application firewall rule as a custom block IP address. And so the idea here, right, is if your customer is bound by sanctions and embargoed lists, you're going to want to sanction the geo countries that you can do a web application firewall. But sometimes IP addresses, maybe like there's a split off, like with Crimea that Russia kind of split off from Ukraine, or the world evolves and changes rapidly, right? And so there's a new country or new thing there. Well, it may not have a country code, and so it drops in as unknown. And the idea here, right, is a security analyst will get a nice report at the end of the day or at the beginning of the morning. They can go through it and then hit a button and block those automatically. Just add a custom web application firewall rule to block these IP addresses if they were found. So I'm still kind of tinkering with an idea of kind of taking for each IP address and filtering it through some layers. Is it a known cloud provider IP address? Is it what does maybe virus total or gray noise or IP API come back with it? And keep filtering that list down so that final list that the security analyst gets is really, these are suspicious looking IP addresses that are unknown, and we think you should block these in a custom WAF rule so that you're maintaining compliance with your sanctions and embargoed input to your application, right? Maybe it's you're selling and you're not allowed to sell from certain countries and things like that. So
yeah, that's
Excellent.
awesome. I love that.
I definitely learned today.
Well,
I'm
and
looking.
I think Nathan's YouTube series is awesome because, like you said, it goes through the whole process. A lot of, to me, I've worked with Logic Apps so long. I kind of, it's like second nature. It's that whole logical operation of thinking. But we have a lot of customers, a lot of folks that really just want to start. They see Logic Apps, they think it's cool. And when you think about what Logic Apps represents, it's literally just a visual programming tool. I don't know, Nathan, what's the number? We have almost 400 Logic App connectors now, or something like that. Each Logic App connector has triggers and processes and everything as part of that. Oh my goodness, it's you can literally, if you can think it, you can automate it. That's essentially it, and do it in a quick and easy manner.
Nathan's pulling up the doc right now.
yeah. I mean, stuff from, you wouldn't even think of it, like AccuWeather, right? So like, for instance, like I was on a call earlier this week and I didn't even think about it. Like an energy company, they want to, they have like weather alerts, right? So a hurricane comes through or a thunderstorm or tornado, right? That's going to probably cause massive power outages, which is going to make massive upticks in their requests to fix, said power outage in a street address or whatnot. And so the idea, right, is like you could even like Logic Apps, okay, when there's a severe alert, go ahead and kick off in my outage ticketing system. Go ahead and ramp up the web apps in Azure that hosts the ticketing system. Go ahead and ramp those up ahead of time or during the event, because I know I'm going to get a ton of traffic, right? And that ton of traffic is totally unpredictable when it's weather-based, right? It's not like, hey, I know I'm a retailer and Black Friday's coming around, or I'm a retailer in hardware and it's springtime and I'm going to get a ton of traffic. It's very unpredictable weather. So even something like using AccuWeather as a connector, getting an alert from that to then basically auto scale out your web apps, it could be interesting, right? For certain scenarios.
Yeah. I did something silly recently. Those LifeX lighting hardware. I have a light bulb that sits in a lamp right here in my office, and if I get a medium severity incident generated in Sentinel, it flashes yellow 10 times. If it's a high severity, it flashes red. So I always know, without even having the console open, whether I have something I need to take a look at. So.
Bridge of the Enterprise over at Mr. Trent's house.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan, someone in chat, Trip, asked, what's a great way that people can promote what you're doing on your YouTube channel right now? Like, are there keywords for hashtags that you're using through Twitter or other mediums that you want people to think about and help you grow your audience?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I mean, my handle's always SwiftSolves through whatever kind of social media or content that I'm creating, whether it's GitHub or YouTube or blog articles. But the main hashtags that I typically use is Azure security automation, hashtag Microsoft Sentinel, hashtag Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Those are kind of the typical hashtags that I'm using. Hashtag Logic Apps. Even if you do hashtag Logic Apps, there's a big community of people, because like Logic Apps aren't necessarily security automation, right? They can be used all kinds of different ways for enterprises to transform. I'm gonna botch the name, but like really antiquated, like 1970s, like EDI artifact, like digital records, right? If you've ever looked at that, it's like you want to pull your hair out, because you're like, man, you were constrained with like such little memory back in the 70s and 80s with computers that like, we're going to encode it some weird way, and this is going to actually be an actual product order according to like 100 different rules that are arbitrary. It almost seems like,
if they were so limited back then
right.
How did they come up with a $6 million man? Right, Trent.
That was aspirational at that time.
Fair. Cool. Thanks for demonstrating this. This was really educational. I learned a lot. I don't play in the space enough, so that was wonderful to see.
Please send the links to me so I can post them in the show notes. I'm definitely looking forward to having time to sleep and also review your videos out there, which will probably be around December 15th to make that happen. But I'm sure everybody that will. And when you're out there, definitely hit the like button, subscribe out there on YouTube, on the YouTube channel for you, and also your LinkedIn schedule would be nice to have. The most important thing is that you got to be consistent.
Oh.
That's one of the reasons why we do this weekly, no matter what. Is the consistency in the content is what's very important. So I'm looking forward to your LinkedIn schedule, hopefully, and also I think Channel 9's going into Learn TV now, so I want to see all that ends up, where all of that ends up going. All right, any departing words from anyone?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's been too long. It's partially my fault because Edward keeps asking me to join, and I'm just, like I said, just getting more comfortable being out there in a digital space. But yeah, for everyone that might be watching, and for everyone here on the call, happy Thanksgiving. I know this can be hopefully a wonderful time if you love your family to get around, and I love it. I get along really well with both my family and my in-laws, and so this is just like my favorite holiday of all year. So happy Thanksgiving. And if you are someone that's hosting Thanksgiving, think about some of your friends or family, and I know this is last minute, that may not have friends or family or might not be doing anything for Thanksgiving.
We'll be posting on Monday, so you might as well push that for the other holiday.
Yeah.
It's a good message, though. Keep going, Nathan. Yeah.
I mean, the last 20 months have been really difficult for a lot of different people in different ways, right? And so reach out and just invite them if you're hosting something, either for Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, or whatever thing you're doing around the holidays, and even especially for Thanksgiving. I know it's last minute. Think about some of those people in your life that you've talked to or haven't talked to in a while. Reach out to them and invite them over. It could rekindle some really great conversations. And I know this could be a difficult time for people, especially that are alone, that don't have family or a lot of friends. So think about those people, invite them over. And that would be my big encouragement for folks, I guess, as my parting thought. Just sharing that conversation, sharing that wealth, just, give back if you can.
Nathan, I love that.
Yeah, agreed.
You have to be honest. You waited for Edward not to be here to show up. Isn't that true?
Yeah. It's okay, Nathan. He's not here. You can tell us. We love saying no to Edward. Yeah. Would you invite Edward to Thanksgiving, Nathan?
Yeah, man, I would love
Yeah.
to.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
But I'm not hosting it this year.
Yeah,
so
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
maybe
Where are
next
you at?
Thanksgiving we'll all have like we'll do the whole table and stuff.
I'm looking forward to having a big Thanksgiving dinner at the next Ignite in person.
Oh,
That would be nice, you know. So where are you out of, Nathan? You're out of Carolinas?
Yeah, Carolina. So Charlotte, North Carolina, and then behind me here in the green screen is the Appalachian Mountains. So I really love that area of the Carolinas.
Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to the next in-person Ignite. That's going to be incredible seeing all these people that have been on the show for the past year and a half, almost 2 years. So
we should do a live podcast.
definitely.
Oh,
definitely.
fun.
I
That'd be
can
good.
I can make it happen with the Ignite folks on the big screen. So
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And until next week.
Take care.